a road, a crash, and a disappearance. The vanishing of Maura Murray. February 9th, 2004, New Hampshire. The air was cold, the night silent, and the roads buried beneath layers of snow. Somewhere along Route 112, a young woman's car slid off the road, headlights still glowing in the dark. When help arrived, she was gone. Her name was Maura Murray. A promising nursing student, a daughter, a sister, who vanished into the freezing night, leaving behind only questions. No footprints, no signs of struggle, just a running engine and the quiet hum of a mystery that would never fade. This is not just a story about a disappearance, it's about silence and the echoes it leaves behind. It was a cold February evening in New Hampshire, the kind of night where the snow on the roadside looks untouched, yet somehow heavy, like it remembers something. At 7:27 p.m., a young woman named Maura Murray vanished into that cold silence. Her black Saturn sedan was found, crashed along a rural stretch of Route 112. Engine running, airbags deployed, no sign of her anywhere. Inside the car, a few empty wine boxes, some personal belongings, and the faint trace of a life that suddenly stopped. To the locals, it seemed like a simple car accident. To her family, it was the beginning of an unending nightmare. And to the internet, years later, it would become one of the most dissected mysteries in modern American history. Who was Maura Murray? Why was she driving alone that night, far from her university dorm, heading toward the White Mountains? And why, after that crash, did she vanish without a trace, as if the earth had quietly swallowed her whole? This is not just a story of a disappearance. It's a story of silence, the kind that echoes louder than words. In the days before she vanished, Maura Murray seemed to be running from something, or perhaps toward something no one else could see. On February 5th, 4 days before her disappearance, Maura crashed her father's car after a night out. It was a minor accident, but it shook her deeply. Fred told her, "Don't worry, it's just metal," and they made plans to go car shopping that weekend. She promised she'd call him on Monday. That call never came. In the days that followed, she appeared distant. At her dorm, she packed up boxes of clothes, textbooks, toiletries, as if preparing for a trip no one else knew about. She withdrew $280 from an ATM, purchased alcohol, and sent a brief email to professors. "There's been a death in the family. I'll be away for a few days." There was no death, no emergency, just a quiet decision to leave. Her last known contact came at 4:49 p.m. on February 9th, a phone call to a condo rental service in New Hampshire asking about accommodations near the mountains. The woman on the other end remembered Maura's voice as polite, calm, but hurried. It was the final trace of her before she entered that dark stretch of Route 112. What was going through her mind? Was she planning a brief escape or something more permanent? No one would ever know. Those who loved her remember that weekend not as a countdown, but as a blur, a series of small, ordinary moments that only later began to feel like clues. A car crash, a phone call, a lie, and then the road. On the afternoon of February 9th, 2004, Maura Murray left the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She told her professors there had been a death in the family. A lie. There was no such tragedy. Instead, she packed her car with clothes, toiletries, and a few bottles of alcohol and drove north. No one knows exactly why. Some say she wanted to escape her stressful nursing program. Others believe she was simply looking for peace, a quiet cabin retreat in the mountains, but peace was not what she found. By 7:25 p.m., she was driving along Route 112, a lonely rural road surrounded by snowbanks and pine trees. A passing school bus driver noticed her car had crashed into a snowbank. When he stopped to check, she insisted she was fine, that help was already on the way. He left. He drove home. And by the time the police arrived just minutes later, Maura was gone. No footprints leading into the woods, no signs of a struggle. Her car doors were locked, her possessions still inside. Her phone, her credit cards, her ID, all left behind. What happened in those missing minutes between the crash and the arrival of police remains one of the most haunting mysteries in America. It was as if Maura Murray had simply stepped out of the world. When police arrived at the scene, Maura's black Saturn sat skewed across the snow, its front end crumpled, hazard lights still blinking into the night. But there was no driver, no sign of injury, just a trace of footprints circling the car and then stopping abruptly. Officers began searching the area within minutes. Dogs were brought in, tracking her scent for nearly 100 yards east before it suddenly vanished, as if lifted straight into thin air. Some investigators theorized she'd gotten into another vehicle. Others believed she ran into the woods and succumbed to the cold. But the woods were scoured for days. Helicopters, volunteers, neighbors combed through the snow. Nothing. No fabric, no footprints, no phone signal. Her father, Fred Murray, arrived in New Hampshire within hours. He walked those same roads day after day, calling her name into the empty air. Reporters described him as desperate, furious, unwilling to accept that his daughter had simply disappeared. As days turned into weeks, the investigation shifted from urgency to confusion. Police questioned nearby residents, rechecked the crash scene, reviewed cell tower pings, yet every lead led nowhere. One officer would later say, "It's as if she vanished into another dimension." The public's fascination began to grow, and with it, so did the theories, each one more bizarre than the last. But the woods were scoured for days. Helicopters, volunteers, neighbors combed through the snow. Nothing. Then came a strange detail. Several locals later reported seeing a red pickup truck idling not far from the crash site that night. One witness swore it had stopped briefly near Maura's Saturn, headlights on, before disappearing down the road. Police took statements, but no driver was ever identified. No plate number, no follow-up lead. Just another shadow on a long list of maybes. Her father, Fred Murray, arrived in New Hampshire within hours. He walked those same roads day after day, calling her name into the empty air. Reporters described him as desperate, furious, unwilling to accept that his daughter had simply disappeared. As the official investigation stalled, the internet picked up where the police left off. Within months, message boards and early forums exploded with theories about what had really happened to Maura Murray. Some believed she had planned her disappearance, that the lies, the packed car, and the empty bottles pointed to a carefully orchestrated escape. Maybe she was starting over, they said. Maybe she wanted to leave everything behind. Others claimed something far darker, that Maura had accepted a ride from a stranger, or someone she knew, and met with foul play. There were reports of suspicious men living near the crash site, strange vehicles seen in the area, even rumors of a local killer. But none of it ever led to solid evidence. Then there were the people who believed she had run into the woods and succumbed to the freezing night. An accidental death, never found beneath the snow. It's a theory her father, Fred, never accepted. He insisted that his daughter was taken, He spent years walking those roads, talking to reporters, begging anyone who might have seen something to come forward. And in time, Maura's case became something else entirely. A mirror reflecting the obsessions of thousands of internet detectives, each convinced they had the answer. They dissected her emails, analyzed her last phone calls, studied satellite maps, and even drove the same road, chasing a ghost they could never find. Everyone had a theory, but no one had the truth. Among the most debated points were the missing 19 minutes, the gap between when the bus driver last saw Maura and when police arrived at the crash site. 19 minutes, no calls, no texts, no footprints leading away. Some believed that in those minutes someone pulled up and offered help. Others thought she panicked, ran into the dark, and vanished before headlights could catch her. That tiny slice of time became the heart of the mystery. Proof, perhaps, that the truth was never far, just buried under uncertainty. Maura Murray's case wasn't just a mystery. It became a phenomenon. For many, it was the first true crime of the internet age. By the late 2000s, her name had become a magnet for online sleuths. Web sleuths threads ran for thousands of pages. Amateur investigators created timelines, digital maps, even reenacted the crash using Google Earth. They weren't police officers, but they acted like it. Then came the podcasts, the YouTube breakdowns, the endless speculation videos, each one trying to solve the puzzle, each one telling the story a little differently. In the process, Maura became two people, the real woman who vanished and the myth that everyone wanted to claim. Her family watched strangers online debate her personal life, her relationships, her grades, her emails, as if she were a character in a show. Rumors spread faster than corrections ever could. And for every sincere effort to help, there were a dozen voices turning tragedy into entertainment. Even law enforcement admitted they had never seen anything like it. One officer said, "The case left the real world and entered the digital one." In time, Maura's disappearance wasn't just about finding answers. It became a reflection of us, our obsession with mystery, our hunger for closure, and how somewhere along the way, the line between empathy and entertainment began to blur. In the months after Maura's disappearance, her family clung to hope with bare hands. Fred Murray spent every weekend in the White Mountains, searching the frozen woods with volunteers. He hung flyers on every gas station and motel wall, asking a question no parent should ever have to ask. "Have you seen my daughter?" He met with detectives, reporters, psychics, anyone who might listen. And every night, when the search ended, he returned to the same empty hotel room. He'd sit by the window, staring at the mountains that had swallowed his child, and whisper into the dark, "Maura, we're still looking." Years passed, but Fred never stopped. When he grew older, his steps slowed, but his anger never did. He believed someone in that small New Hampshire town knew what happened, and that they were staying silent. Local officers grew frustrated with his accusations, but he didn't care. To him, silence was the same as guilt. As time went on, documentaries began to appear, first on television, then online. Each promised new evidence, shocking twists, never-before-heard theories. But to the Murray family, every episode was a wound reopening. They'd watch actors reenact her crash, narrators question her motives, strangers debate whether she was troubled or deceptive. Fred once said in an interview, "They turned my daughter's pain into a guessing game." When he passed away in 2023, his other daughter, Julie Murray, took up the search. She became the quiet voice of reason in a storm of speculation. appearing on podcasts, challenging misinformation, and reminding people that the case they were discussing over coffee was her sister's life. She said, "I don't want Maura to be a mystery. I want her to be remembered as my sister, funny, stubborn, alive." Shortly before his passing, Fred had returned one last time to Route 112. Julie later said he stood by the roadside for hours, staring at the trees as snow began to fall again. He didn't say much, just whispered, "I'm here, kiddo." That was his final visit. Julie said he didn't find her, but he finally let her rest. And so the search continued, not just for Maura's body, but for her humanity, buried under years of noise, theories, and digital fog. It's been more than 2 decades since Maura Murray disappeared into that cold February night. The road where her car was found looks different now. New pavement, new houses, new families who drive past every day, unaware of the story buried beneath the snow. But for those who remember, Route 112 is still haunted. Not by ghosts, but by silence. Every year, strangers leave flowers near the spot where her car once stood. Some whisper prayers, others just stand there, trying to understand how a person can vanish so completely. Maybe Maura ran away. Maybe someone took her. Maybe she simply walked into the night hoping to disappear for a while and never found her way back. The truth remains out there, somewhere between the facts and the fog. What's left is not just a mystery, but a question that refuses to fade. How can someone's story become everyone's obsession and yet her voice still be unheard? The world moved on. But for her family, and for those who still search, time stands still on that icy road in New Hampshire. And maybe that's what Maura's story really is, a reminder that behind every headline, behind every theory, there's a heartbeat that once was. A girl who laughed, who dreamed, who loved, and whose echo still lingers in the silence. Every secret waits to be revealed. Every silence that carries an echo, every story is waiting to be told. This was her secret. What about yours? What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments. Every voice matters. Subscribe and step into the echoes of truth.